So somebody that you and I both know said this: Tesla retail investors are way more informed about the future cash flow opportunities for the business, meaning Tesla, as the company executes. The source of higher multiple is understood, and Tesla explained that they remain on track for those items. Smash and grab media reporters are uninformed chirons who only make their sources appear less informed and ignorant. I think, oh, that was you. You said that.
Yeah.
So, this is, by the way, for those of you who are unfamiliar, it's Jeff Lutz, and Jeff Lutz is a supply chain expert. Jeff, well, okay, we had the earnings call yesterday night. I'm sure you've been asked 7,000 times what you thought about the earnings call, but how about telling me as you reflect about the media versus us retail investors, what did you mean?
I mean, what I mean, I was interesting. We were doing some of the pre shows and then the show after, and I saw the Chiron, what's below the screen on all the media channels. I had Fox Business up, I had CNBC up, and I was just looking at CNBC, and it was hyperventilating about units and sales in January and brand damage or not. And meanwhile, the call was really focused on what drives the multiple of Tesla. And what drives the multiple of Tesla is not what they sold in January, February. By the way, it's not to change the topic or the conversation. Revenue was below plan, EPS was below plan, uh, gross margins were actually somewhat surprisingly okay given the lack of production in the quarter. Free cash flow was lower, but still, it kind of there's a couple ways to look at it. Their number one, the product that's two-thirds of their production was down for half the quarter, essentially, and they still printed they still printed free cash, and their gross margins weren't in the tank. I was surprised, actually. So what does it mean though when they fill back that production queue and they add those hundred or more thousand units back into the queue and start shipping again? Uh, I actually think they're in a good spot. Energy, getting back to record gross margins, flying in the face of what's happening with, tariffing some of the inputs on that. The team got on the call and said they've got a plan actually to connect those dots. It's not without risk, but they've actually made progress since the last earnings call on, battery supply, for example, and a number of things. I just think, I look at the business just fundamentally differently. It's not always rose-colored glasses either. I was actually quite constructive about their approach to their product transitions. There's other ways to do it. They're more inventory intensive than what Tesla does. They're more cash flow intensive, but Tesla is clearly shown us that they're putting cash flow ahead of units, and they're making different priorities for the business. They're not focused on that extra 5,000 units here or there. They're really focused on this transition of their business from a metal bending business solely to a metal bending business plus energy plus real world AI in the form of robots on wheels and humanoid form. And that's where I see it. And I also see the whole company. I see the earnings reports through a supply chain lens of, I see a decade of work to localize their supply chains. I see a decade of work for them to vertically integrate. I see and I see all this time, and it's taken so much cost out of the system that they are the only profitable EV maker in the world on record. There's nobody else that we have any kind of clear record that they actually produce the EV segment profitably. And so I just looked through it as through a different lens. They had their supply chain leaders on the call. They spoke to various areas. You can tell what they really emphasize. And Elon brought everything back to that factory being the product. And, this next jump they're going to make with Cybercab, where they're essentially going to be able to have an output mechanism that's, 5 to 6x faster than what, I mean, companies don't typically do that from one massive generation to the next. It's pretty atypical. So I think this is going to converge. I think they're going to have this superiority in making automobiles, but you're going to see this energy growth happening. You're going to see that they've probably solved supervised FSD. We haven't seen a release in 6 months, and they've been cooking and improving that in the background. They're probably close on unsupervised, maybe plus or minus a month here. They've got new vehicles. We'll talk maybe more about that and what those could be. But I really see this convergence coming together. We're just in the middle of the transition. It's tactical, it's real, it's bottoming of margins, it's bottom. That was probably one of the worst quarters, that you could have. And the question is where we go from here. And I think it's invariably higher.
And of course, they're putting massive amounts of money into R&D. And that, of course, is a ton of it is going into the dojo and into the new data center. And not only the data center they just finished, but the data center they're building across the lot. I don't know, behind the existing Gigafactory in Texas. So they will be so far ahead of any other company in terms, I mean, not even close. I mean, it won't even be in the ballpark as to real world AI compute and this gives them another set of potentialities. So just for fun, let's go there first. They said they might be working on other embodied AI products. And we've thrown out, some people have thrown out a few ideas like drones, but he did emphasize that it would be something they could use in the factory. Did you have any thoughts? Did that give you any like what could they be doing next?
Well, I mean, Tesla AI has entered the factory. They've started through the shipping door in terms of getting product out of final inspection and getting it to the lot. That's AI. That's Tesla AI that's entered the factory. There's no other example to my knowledge where you're done assembling the product and you've done the final inspection and it picks itself up and walks itself over to distribution to the warehouse to move to, and it's going to go from there. At some point they're going to drive off the lot, at least to the local deliveries, and then if they go on flatbeds to other places, they're going to they'll drive off of there and just go for it. The AI has entered the factory, and I think what Elon's referring to is that there will be more examples of this, and it's perfectly logical, right? So if you look at Elon, you look at his history. He was obviously the one of the founders of OpenAI. He actually there's some documentation that he at one point had tried to Tesla acquire OpenAI, I believe in 2018, and he's been a leader in this space since the beginning of it. And so if you're Elon and you're looking at your 15 or 20 direct reports inside of Tesla, what's one of the logical questions you're going to ask? Well, if you're Lars and you're doing engineering of product, well, how are you going to use AI to simulate better? How are you going to use AI to cut down the number of design revisions? How are you going to use AI to simulate two parts being combined and the effects of doing certain things? How are you going to do that? If he's talking to a supply chain team, how are you going to use AI in the supply chain to predict material flows, pricing changes, and how to deal with things more efficiently, effectively? If you're in manufacturing, man, it's an open field as it relates to AI. You have all these opportunities for optical inspection. You have cameras on all these Optimus. You have cameras on all these robots, stationary bots that are in the factory. You can put cameras anywhere. You can put compute anywhere. So when you have all the cameras, you have all the compute, it's just like they're on the vehicle. What could they be gathering in the manufacturing environment about material, about defects, about certain manufacturing methods, about certain we built these serial numbers these ways in this method. This is what they looked like, and how did they actually perform as we parametrically tested the product later in the factory? What was the warranty like on those products that were built this certain way? How did they perform over a couple of years? So I think that's what I think that's it. either that's what he means, or in addition to what he said, he also means that as well. And he's not going to come out publicly and talk about it. I think it's going to be a very competitive, a huge competitive strength of Tesla. And eventually, maybe it's something they do license. They have their own Warp software, internal software, which is how they do their inventory, their ERP, how they manage their shop floor controls in the factory, the connections to the service environment. There's no, in Larry and I debated this, there's no reason why that those couldn't advance. It's not necessarily that you have, super intelligence occurring and it's perfect, but there could be some gradual migration, whether it's more advanced machine learning to all the way to something that is more AI related. So if I'm Elon Musk and I have all this experience on the world stage, I've brought physical real world AI to a place no one else has. And I'm doing it right now with Grok on the large language model side for superintelligence. Why wouldn't I be driving that internal with my teams?
Yeah, so for me, it's probably it may be partially just because I'm so interested in it, but I also think that Elon is always looking for the big win. He doesn't. He's when you're already going to be making the number one and number two products ever in the robot with four wheels and the robot with two legs. The only other product that comes to mind, really, to me, that is going to be those kind of numbers is drones. And he is a massive drone fan. He's been talking about drone being the future of war for at least 2 years. That that's all will be drones, basically. Brian Wong and I have had 15 conversations about that on YouTube over the last 2 years because it's so obvious. And then he brings it up. They actually bring it up yesterday as far as drones again as part of the call. So I'm thinking there's at least a possibility, and talking about the fact that the United States is way, way behind, and China is winning that game. So anyway, I think it might be it
Yeah.
might just turn out to be drones.
Well, there are other U.S. companies that are ramping up in this space, both on the military side. But yeah, you can say that there's a consumer need, there's a military national defense need. I've not studied it close enough. I know it's clear that China is ahead. If I look at all my, I have several drones and all my consumer drones, and the best ones I've evaluated are, were developed and made there. I'm not too happy about that. But yeah, this is definitely an area I just, you know, it's an area we need to solve, but it's all there. There's Anduril, there's other companies out there that are looking at this
Mhm.
and they're building products in this space. And the question is do they have the right assets to succeed, or does Elon and Tesla need to intervene? I still think they have a big task ahead of them with vehicular autonomy and humanoids. Like that's massive. So it's not like
Yeah.
there's a lot of room to pick up something else, but never say never.
On the other hand, he is an entrepreneur who's always going to be looking for the next bright, shiny object.
Yep.
And again, he's shown a lot of interest in it. And it goes way, as you know, it goes way beyond just military and kind of the normal consumer stuff. It's being used in crop control. It's being used in forest control. I mean, it's just massive numbers of
Yeah.
places where the drones are being used. And I'm not sure that there's really a lot of US makers that are outside the military area that are really coming up with great drones. But anyway, that was just one idea.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead because we are running a little short on time here. I do want to get your impressions on Model Q because that became, as I've joked about on X today, I said, well, I'm sure glad that we all understand what that Model Q is going to be now. Oh, no, the debate got even bigger. So I know you have a very clear, or not a very clear, that would be, I think, the wrong way to characterize it. But go ahead and explain your analysis of what was said and what you think that's going to turn out to be.
Yeah. I don't, if I'm Tesla, I don't want, I just ramped up the Model Y. I don't want to be telling people I have a million people on my earnings call. If you look at the YouTube numbers, like I've never seen anything like it. They're out. I mean, they're outpacing, national TV news, everything with their earnings call. There's so many people on the Tesla earnings call, and
Oh,
it gets replayed so many times across. It was all over the news all night,
yeah.
and so I don't want people on the call saying, "Well, I just ramped up the Model Y. I see it's for sale." and now, but I'm going to wait because there's going to be something that's locked like the Model Y and cheaper. So here's what's happening. It's confusing. I think Tesla probably could do a better job. I also think that they don't want to Osborne their current products. Uh, what have they said? First off, they've taken real estate in their earnings deck, the last four earning decks. They've taken a paragraph of real estate and they said that we're going to introduce new lower cost affordable vehicles. They said they're going to use existing CapEx that's on the 3Y line. What does that mean? Think of the large robots. Think of the line flow.
Mm.
Think of the major modules of how that product goes together. And then think of designing a product that can fit in that flow. So now park that mentally.
Okay.
The second thing they said is we're going to grab modules from the next generation vehicle. Those modules had to ramp ahead of the Cybercab regardless, because they're the modules, they're inputs, they're electrical. Most of them are electrical in nature, so they had to ramp much earlier. So they're ramping now. And so what are those modules? Those could be next generation, the sub $1,000 motor they've talked about without rare earths. That could be a new battery pack, lower cost battery pack. It could be a number of different modules. Could be 5, 6, 8 different modules. It's not going to be the unboxed process because that's a different process. It's not going to be the finishes that make the Cybercab. That is not fully developed. They have a lot of homework to do. So what is it? Well, they said they're using the CapEx from the 3Y line. They have a hit on their hand. They have the biggest automobile hit in the world with the Model Y. So if you put all the pieces together, I told you to park the fact that they're using the CapEx. I told you to park the fact that they're going to be using these lower cost modules. Now, here's a third element that comes in. When you use depreciated CapEx, you give yourself, in the unit economic stack, in the cost, you give yourselves a big starting win in that by using depreciated CapEx, by using fully ramped up capital, by using capital that has, quite frankly, been highly utilized by other product lines. You give yourself what would have been a much larger figure in the unit economics for CapEx. You've shrunk it down and you've made it a much, much smaller number. That's free money in the unit economics that the consumers don't care about, they don't see, but you drag it to the bottom line. It could be thousands of dollars in this situation, just to put it into perspective. So I'm starting with a more utilized line. I'm leveraging existing CapEx. I'm using these lower cost modules. Why wouldn't I want to make it look like the number one selling car in the world, but maybe a little bit different? So my theory is there's going to be a couple of separate releases. The mini Model Y, I think they may do a smaller, could be more hatchback version, but just smaller. For Europe and Asia primarily. Could come to the US, but just a smaller version of the vehicle. There's been a lot of requests for it. The other thing is a larger vehicle. You can get a lot of economies of scale, and you can make a lot from a gross margin perspective. People pay for vehicle size where the underlying core unit economics are already there. They don't have to expand as much. You're just literally adding some additional material, but you can charge a whole lot more. So think larger 6 or 7 seat Model Y, but a comfortable 6 or 7 seat Model Y. That's not the $70,000 to $90,000 Model X, but something that could start in the $45,000 to $55,000 range. So think larger Model Y. So think Model Y big, think Model Y mini. That's what I'm thinking they're doing. Mm-hmm. And we'll see what happens. And again, if you put that out there before those vehicles are out there in supply, there could be a lot of people that want the smaller Y and they'll wait, especially if it's going to be cheaper. The other thing that's clouding all of this are the tariffs. And if these cars are cheaper, and if Tesla is making $5,000 to $7,500 of margin on the 3Y products, depending on region and trim and so forth, and quite frankly, they're taking a several $1,000 hit on some of the financing deals they're doing. But then now you take that and you do these lower cost vehicles, they're probably going to make in the $25,000 to maybe $5,000 range in terms of margins per vehicle. You cut into that with tariffs. I mean, if 25% of their content is getting a 20, 10, 20, 25% input tariff, you're going to cut into those margins by maybe $1,000, $1,500 or more. So I could see them slow rolling a bit to see what happens with the tariffs. Why bring all this material in April and May
Mhm.
when the president may change his approach to auto parts? So a number of variables that are in the air. I'm sure they just have things they need to work out, but they're not going to talk about them until they're in inventory ready to order.
Okay. All right. Cool. I like it. I like it. So Robotaxi rolls out 10 or so in Austin in June, 10 or 20 in Austin, and then a very fast ramp. So what did you take that to mean? How did you, I've already told everybody what I thought about that. What did you think that meant?
Yeah, I think that was just a day one number. I don't think people should get obsessed about it. I think any factory ramp, when you're starting a new product, you've got to build the first unit first and you've got to get it through the process. So this is a ramp up of robo taxis on the street. So what they're doing now is they probably have dozens of them out there now, shuttling employees, and they're working the kinks out. But now, once you expand that beyond your employees, now you're expanding it to real consumers. You open yourself up to more risk and you open yourself up to more exposure and issues. So you want to be careful with how you're doing it. You've got a fleet operation to ramp up, you've got a cleaning operation to ramp up, you've got a charging operation to ramp up. All these things have to work together, and you want to bring it up together very carefully. So I think it's going to be the fastest ramp up of any taxi service out there. I think they have the cars, they have the capability to do this. I just think they're going to be very pragmatic about it. And so that's all I read into it. Um, you can ask the question like, okay, where are the vehicles coming from? Are these brand new vehicles? Where, I think Tesla will figure out where to get vehicles from. I don't think it's going to be an issue. But yeah, I think they want to be deliberate about it because all these functions are new. Again, the cleaning operation, the fleet operation, they want to be deliberate. It would have been pretty irresponsible to say we're going to light up the entire state of Texas or the entire state of California and just let it rip and put 10,000. I think that would have been responsible. And I think the probability of error would have been very high. All you need is one bad thing to happen. It gets, trampled in social media with a billion impressions, and then you're killing something that you didn't need to do. So I'm okay with their approach, and I think they can scale it very quickly. They've done the really hard work, which is they got the business model right. So the cost of the vehicle, the cost of the autonomy solution, vertically integrating this thing from the base layer of silicon that they designed in the vehicle all the way to the cleaning brush and the cleaning cloth that goes across the screen in the car and that robotic arm. That's all engineered by Tesla. So they're not paying anybody a margin to do that. They're paying their employees. They're setting this thing up themselves. They're scaling it themselves, and they don't have to pay anybody else to do it. So all they can do is bring all this up, optimize it, make it better and better, and eventually the output's going to be a service that runs at a fraction of the cost of the competition. And that's where I think we spend 99% of our time talking about how many interventions, how many cars are going to be on the road. And we spend 1% of the time talking about the business model. They've won the day on the business model. It's not even close. It may be a factor of 10 or more. We'll see in terms of the cost differential between a fully scaled Tesla network versus other networks. We'll see. But they've clearly won the day on this, and that's the story.
Okay, so I've been asking all my co-hosts this next question, and it got a little more color yesterday because then Elon says we're going to ramp it fast, and he says by the end of 2026 we will have millions. So millions would be, I guess, two or more. Although I guess you could say that 1.5 million would be millions. Anyway, it's somewhere in the range of millions of cars by the end of next year. So this suggests that he thinks that the regulation thing is not, and he did say, unless regulations get in the way, but he must have enough information flow coming in from the regulators to believe that the regulation thing is not going to be a big a big problem, or he wouldn't have made the comment, I don't think. So if he's thinking in terms of millions by the end of next year, then we're talking about probably at least two continents, if not three. We're also talking about lots and lots of cities. So we're talking about taking over not just all of Waymo's business, but really digging into Ubers and cab drivers. When does when does Tesla become a product that is no longer available to be purchased by a consumer for their individual use because it makes no sense anymore as a business case?
Yeah, you know what? I've heard folks bring this up, Alexandra, others. I haven't sat down with a spreadsheet and modeled it. I mean, there's going to be some cost per mile. I mean, right now, if I try to hail an Uber, a decent Uber to go to the airport, it's, 80, $90. At some point when it's $4 or $3, I don't want to worry about driving my car there or someone in my family driving me. I'm just gonna, so when we get down to the fraction, I think what's going to happen is there's just going to be this slow migration of I'm still going to own my car. I hope Tesla's still going to sell me a car because there are times I just want to go in. I want to have that autonomy. I want to be able to go in and, no pun intended, and drive my car or be driven in my own car. And so I want to have my own car. But at some point, more of my miles and more of my rides are going to be going onto the network probably. And it's just a question of where you live and what the options are and the opportunities. It's going to start in the urban areas like it does with the current ride share today. I never, 20 years ago, right? No, none of us ever thought that, people would be opting to not own cars, but they don't own cars, and that is growing immensely. So I don't have the exact time or the dollar figure yet, but I do think auto ownership is going to change meaningfully. But a lot of these vehicles need to get onto the road to enable that. And that ramp up is going to be all consuming for a number of years, I think, to get to that. Because quite frankly, there isn't anything else out there like it. I think Elon's being very literal when he says, like, when this flips on, and it's going to be like, riding a horse and buggy, using a flip phone. It's going to be like that. And so it's just a matter of it's going to be this dichotomy of there will be less individual car ownership, but there will also be this massive ramp to get vehicles out there with this capability so people don't own their own cars.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
don't know if I describe that effectively enough, but yeah, it'll be this migration. I'll probably always own a car. I like my Cybertruck. I want to have it. But I also, if I don't have to deal with it, I don't have to deal with parking. I don't have to deal with leaving my car somewhere, especially if I'm going on a trip. I'll definitely call a Robotaxi.
So we've got the two sides on this sociological experiment that we're going to be part of. And so one is my decision. Okay, I'd like to keep a car. I think I've famously already given up my car. My wife and I just have the one car now, the one Tesla. And so if we both need a car at the same time, we get an Uber. So there's the one side is my choice, and I believe that there'll be lots of people that, like you, that will even have a more practical reason for still wanting to own a car. They'll be they're a service provider, and they got stuff in the car that they need to take in and out of a location or out of a home. You have moms that are not going to want to be taking the baby seats in and out of a cyber cab. So there's going to be lots of folks that have an absolute reason for wanting to own the vehicle. So, but then we got the other side, which is kind of the side I'm trying to concentrate on, was when will Tesla not see a business reason for selling a car to the individual? In other words, the price will be too high, so the consumer won't buy it because it'll just be stupid to buy it, or where the demand from fleets, from their own fleet, as they put out their own fleet, and also from other fleet buyers, even if it's only a fleet of 2 to 10, but they're going to be putting it into action, therefore earning Tesla more money in the Robotaxi network. At some point, it may be dumb for them to sell it to anybody else.
Yeah, Yes, but I think Tesla is going to get a piece of the pie, whether they're selling you a vehicle. I think, this capability is going to be turned on, and whether you use, full self-driving to be, to drive yourself and to drive your things and just always have your things in your car, or it's a taxi service. 'Cause remember, if you're getting into a taxi, you're getting into somebody else's thing. Yes, Grok will configure it nicely. I'm sure the lighting will be exactly what you want. The temperature will be what you want. There's nobody going to be talking to you. Um, I'm sure it'll be an experience on a different level, but you know, I want to get into a car. I want my sunglasses there. I don't want to carry that with me. Um, I I may have my favorite drink in there, or there may be things that I don't know. I think, I think this is a, I think there will come a time that it's just a question of the availability and the abundance of these vehicles that have this capability by region. I think it's going to take a long time. We're talking years to get to. Tesla's not going to stop selling cars in the next couple of years. I think it's going to take a number of years to get to that point. But as someone would have to describe to me in a sentence or two what you can't just say it doesn't make sense to own a vehicle. Described in a sentence or two, what would have to happen? What abundance of, like, how many minutes for me to get my ride hailed and have it show up at my door? Like, what would the experience have to be so people aren't buying cars from Tesla and Tesla would not want to sell them to people? What would that necessarily look like? And don't forget, I think Tesla is going to have most of the market share for an intermediate period of time. I don't think it's going to be indefinite.
Right, of course. So I guess again, I'm talking more about it from the other side, which is yes, you might still want to have a car, and you have good reasons for wanting to have a car. And I can think of some ways to maybe solve some of those issues
Yeah.
that we've both talked about. I'm talking about there will be car companies that will still be selling cars to individuals because they won't have a robotaxi capability. They won't have a network. Maybe they'll be autonomous, but they won't have a network. They won't see the advantage of trying to compete with Tesla at that level. So you might be able to buy some kind of a truck or some kind of a car from some other company, or buy a used one that is still doesn't have that capability. But I don't. The other side of the coin is, will Tesla want this to lose the $6,000 a year of revenue from a Airbnb version, or the 50,000 or 40 or 30,000 from their own fleet version? Will they have any, will there be any wisdom in selling that because they'll
Yeah.
have demand for those cars?
Well, I mean, the other thing that they could do is they could just raise the price
Yeah.
immensely for personally owned vehicles and give people that choice. I think giving people choice is important, but it's an interesting it's an interesting question to ponder. My brain hurts a bit. It's end of day. I just wrote a nasty article on tariffs. Have a read.
Oh, yes.
And
Yeah.
yeah,
And we didn't get to
and
tariffs. We didn't get to tariffs. And it's like, oh, and we're out of time.
tariffs are good if they're applied the right way, if they're executed the right way, and you have people in the room that know what they're doing. That's the
Yeah.
summary of the article.
Okay.
I agree with the president's end of objectives and what he's trying to do. I think they should be supported, but I think he needs to be served by people that would understand how to execute what he's looking for. I'm not sure we have that yet, and time's ticking. We have 60% vacancy on recent port departures out of Shanghai. This
60.
is weird. Okay, we should be loading up for the summer. A lot of sales for the summer, a lot of products coming in for the summer. This is weird what we're doing. I get it. We think we're in this major, tit for tat with China. I got it. They're not our friend. I get it. There's a way to deal, there's a way to negotiate with them. I just don't feel it's the approach that we're taking. You can be aggressive, you can be tough, but you have to be effective. And right now it feels like we're negotiating with ourselves in the media. We're releasing content into the media. I think that's giving our trade partners information and an advantage that we shouldn't be doing. And we're not involving some of the best industrialists in the world that are actually, they live in the United States. And I'm sure that together we could probably come up with a better deal structure and a better approach than what we're doing to get us to a new level. I think we are getting ripped off in many respects, but I also think it's complex. It's not easy to understand, and we've maybe have taken an overly simplistic, blunt approach. And I will just tell you, under the surface, there is severe damage happening from a supply perspective, and I do think jobs are going to be impacted here starting, imminently now. And I don't know how you don't always recover. It's once you start laying people off, it's hard to just I'm going to rehire everybody because a policy just changed again. I think we need to get some stability in what we're doing. I think we need a more gradual yet aggressive approach. So read the article. Let me know what you think. Um, uh, and we'll address it next time, I'm sure.
Okay. All right. All right. So I know you've got you're in tremendous demand right now, Jeff Lutz. Thank you for coming on.
So
And
are you, Randy.
yeah, I'm in
Thanks for
demand.
having me.
All right. We'll see you next time, and we'll get on to the numbers.
Thanks, Randy. Have a good one.
Bye for now.
See you. Bye.
Okay, so what did happen today? Well, we know that it was a really good one. At the very end, things did come off. There was a couple of downturns during the middle of the day. I mean, we had this tremendous beginning, a great start to the day. I'm sure many of you followed it. But Tesla did come down a bunch at the end, but still up 5.37% for the day. That's a pretty darn good day considering how good yesterday was. So a couple of 5% days in a row ended the day at 250 and 74 cents. Now in the after hours, actually it was up earlier, but now it's down just a tad, down 0.3, about 75 cents in the after hours. We've got the Mag 7, we're all up, and we've got the Cathie Woods all up except for CRISPR, who's been up so strongly. I still haven't looked it up to find out what's going on with CRISPR, but they actually had a down day in the market today, but the rest were all up. If we go and take a look at the bonds here, we have got the bonds were down a little, but not as much as I was hoping, 0.2% during the regular hours. And of course, we don't have the after. This is 3:30 California time as I'm doing this, and we don't have the after hours yet or the pre-market yet for the bonds. We've got the oils sitting a little bit down. We're at 62.23 for Texas Intermediate now, pretty much where we've been for a week. We've been between 61 and 64 for quite a few days now. And Brent has decided for some reason to be $4 higher right now. I don't think there's been any new, uprisings in the Middle East that would cause this. So who knows why right now. We have got let's see. We have got, and I mentioned this morning that OPEC says that they're considering increasing production in June. Natural gas continues down. We are almost to $3. We're at $3 and 0.8 of a cent. So we're about as close to $3 as you can be without being at 3. Gold turned around, up 26 in the pre-market at 33.20, but of course, way off of the 3,500 of a couple of days ago, a couple of trading sessions ago. Silver up another 0.07 in the pre-market, 33.57, and copper drifting down a little bit after being well up all this last few days, sitting at $4.83. The dollar continues to rebound, but looking mixed here in terms of by currency. Crypto or Bitcoin up 2,081 for the day, 93,572. Pretty much the last 2 days been very, very strong. And then with the futures in terms of the equities, we've got the Dow down 130 or 0.33%, S&P down 0.8, I'm sorry, down 8, which is 0.15%, and the NASDAQ down 38.5 or 0.20%. So all three down a little bit after a big day, after 2 big days, actually. So some profit taking right now. During the course of the day, of course, we had news on and off about the tariffs, about the whether who's negotiating, who's not negotiating. And so I think most of those kinds of pieces of news were what was driving things today. We also had some news on the Beige Book. Beige Book came out, and it was still okay. It was, a little soft, a little not quite what you would hope, for a robust economy, but it was not yet showing any layoffs. It was saying softness, but no layoffs. Was not yet showing any significant decrease in activity, but a lot of conversation, as we've seen now for a couple of weeks in a lot of the reporting. People are just a little nervous. They're concerned. They're pulling back a little. And it's pretty much all across the regions. Prices are still steady. And whatever price pressures people are feeling, it's mostly from the tariff area. So yeah, the Beige Book I don't think it might have impacted the market there, not being very strong, but I don't think it would be anything that was not expected. All right, so what do we got here? What we got coming up. I am going to do a very thorough analysis of the meeting yesterday, of the earnings call yesterday. I'm gonna try to go in some directions that nobody else has gone in yet. There are definitely undercurrents of what was said, not making stuff up, just taking things in turn. As you know, I always go off what Elon says or what the executives say. But sometimes obviously you can see what they said yesterday about the Model Q in 15 different ways. I thought Jeff did a great job. Let me know in the comments below what you thought about Jeff's analysis. He pretty much thought that Brian Wong is wrong about using the plastic panels, but maybe what he didn't say, and what I didn't ask him and should have, is maybe some part of the car might be using that new plastic process, even if it's not all the panels. But anyway, I thought that was very valuable, the way that he described it, based on his knowledge of how these things are set up, which is way beyond my knowledge. So anyway, that's what I'm going to do tonight. I'm going to very much encourage you to pop back tonight. So hit that button to notify you about that. It'll be out at about 7:45, and I'm really going to be interested to hear what you think, because this is going to be very, very different. All right. Is there anything else I need to tell you? Of course, you could always join Patreon. That would be phenomenal. That would be absolutely great. Yeah, I think I'm done with you for now, but I will be back with a lot more shortly. Yeah. See you then. It's been great talking to you.